Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the glow of an ancient fire. The air smells of wood smoke and damp earth, and sparks drift upward like tiny stars escaping gravity's rules. Somewhere in the dark you hear slow breathing, your own maybe or the breath of the first dreamers. They sit in a circle wrapped in animal hides, staring at the dancing flames as if they're watching the world being born. You probably wouldn't survive a single night out here. No GPS, no bug spray, no instant noodles, but these people? They're about to build the blueprint for everything you call civilization. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind hisses across the grasslands. You pull your fur cloak tighter, feeling the prickly warmth of something freshly skinned. Around you, firelight paints orange halos on faces, some young, some creased like cracked leather. They're silent, but you can almost hear their thoughts turning. These aren't just hunters or gatherers, they're engineers in animal disguise. Someone pokes the embers with a stick, and you catch the glint of curiosity in their eyes. They've learned something miraculous: fire obeys. Feed it and it grows. Smother it and it dies. You can cook meat, harden wood, scare predators, and, maybe most importantly, sit long enough to think. Historians still argue whether fire made humans smarter or just more dangerous. But here in this hush it feels like both. The flames are the first screen we ever stared into, the first story ever told in flickering light. You watch shapes dance, maybe an antelope chase, maybe a memory, and realize this is the prototype for every movie, every bedtime story, every spark of imagination since. A child tosses something into the fire, a chunk of strange, shiny stone, and it hisses, spits, and glows. The tribe jumps back, startled, then leans in. Curiosity beats fear. They don't know it yet, but they've just discovered the idea of transformation, of change through heat. You hold that glowing stone and watch it soften. The edges slump like wax, and a thought sneaks through your mind. What if this can be shaped? It's not quite metal yet, but the idea is there. Fire is forged, not just warmth. The smell of burning rock fills the night, sharp and metallic. You cough and grin because somewhere thousands of years later, someone's going to call this chemistry. The morning comes gray and wide. Smoke clings to your hair and your stomach rumbles. The group moves on, leaving a charred patch and a few scattered bones. You trail them, stepping carefully through dew-soaked grass. The world is raw, full of noise and danger, but it's also full of possibility. You come across a rock with grooves, a natural pattern maybe, or something else. Your fingers trace it and the texture feels deliberate. Someone's been scratching, shaping. They didn't have language as you know it, but this could be the first message carved in stone. A handprint. A tally. A memory that refuses to vanish. Somewhere between survival and art, invention happens. You can almost hear the gears in your ancestors' head grinding into motion. That's the thing about humanity, we never stop tinkering. If there's a way to make life slightly easier or slightly cooler, someone will find it, even if they have to hit rocks together for 10,000 years to do it. The sun rises higher and the landscape glitters with rivers. You squat at one's edge, cupping your hands to drink. The water's brown, but it reflects the sky like polished bronze. The mud between your fingers feels alive. Sticky, pliable, promising. You roll it into a ball, flatten it, scratch a line. It's addictive. You make another mark and another until you've built a pattern. When the ball dries, it cracks, but the marks stay. A whisper of permanence. It's the first seed of civilization, the realization that thought can outlast breath. You smile. The river answers with a burble as if to say, keep going. You wander farther downstream where the earth turns richer, thicker, ready to be molded. The smell of wet clay fills your nose, it's the scent of beginnings. You squat beside a man with a reed stylus, pressing shapes into damp slabs. He mutters numbers under his breath, eyes flicking between baskets of grain and a patient-looking ox. He's not creating poetry. He's creating proof. Records. Receipts. Civilization's first paperwork. Historians still argue whether writing was invented for storytelling or accounting, but watching this guy, it's clearly the latter. Bureaucracy came before beauty. You chuckle softly, some things never change. He holds up a finished tablet, squints and nods. Lines, wedges, dots. To him it's a miracle. To you, it's the ancestor of every text message ever sent. You can practically hear the first "please deliver barley ASAP" encoded in those marks. A child nearby copies him, tongue poking out in concentration. The little one messes up, scrapes the clay smooth and starts again. The first, edit undo. Humanity's earliest Control plus Z. As the tablet hardens in the sun, something incredible happens. People start treating it like truth. The mark becomes memory and memory becomes law. No more arguing about who owns how many sheep. The clay says it, so it's real. You can almost hear civilization sigh in relief and mutter, finally, some receipts. The air hums with quiet importance. You look around and see shelves of clay, hundreds of tablets lined up, each one a fragment of order. The world has found a way to think outside the brain. You run your fingers over one and realize you're touching the dawn of history itself. Before this, everything was rumor, legend, echo. Now things can be proven, preserved, revisited. You can imagine archaeologists thousands of years later, faces dusty and eyes bright, whispering. This one says, 2 goats, 1 jug of beer. Speaking of beer, the smell hits you next: yeast, barley, and sun-warmed clay. You follow it to a courtyard where people laugh and clink cups. They're celebrating a good harvest, maybe, or just the fact that their taxes are finally written down. Someone hands you a mug and it's surprisingly cold from the earthen jug. You take a sip, sweet, foamy, alive. Civilization tastes like this. Then, as laughter fades and twilight returns, you notice a strange sound, the rhythmic creak of something wooden. You turn your head. In the half-light, a potter sits beside a spinning disc, shaping a vessel as it turns. The wheel hums like a heartbeat. You lean closer, hypnotized. Clay rises in elegant spirals between the potter's fingers, perfectly symmetrical. Each rotation smooths the shape and you realize this spinning miracle is about to change everything. The first wheel wasn't made for travel. It was made for art, for patience, for beauty. And somewhere in that slow, even turn lies the foundation of every engine, turbine, and spinning hard drive the world will ever know. You smile as the potter lifts the finished bowl, the firelight catching its sheen. The same hands that shaped mud into meaning now shape it into motion. Humanity has learned the most important lesson of all. Once you find balance, you can move forward. You sit back, the hum of the wheel merging with the crackle of the fire. The stars above shimmer faintly, reflected in the bowl's smooth curve. It's as if the heavens themselves approve. The sound of the potter's wheel fades into the slow creak of another circle, heavier now, wood on stone, a deep rhythm echoing through time. You blink, and suddenly you're standing in a dusty field where oxen pull a crude wooden cart. The smell of sweat and hay mixes with something metallic and new, the scent of movement. You walk closer, watching 2 men adjust the thick wooden disc that's just been mounted to the cart's axle. It's not perfect, wobbly, uneven, but it works. When they push, it rolls, and that's all that matters. You can feel the satisfaction radiating off them like heat from sun-baked earth. The world has just learned to glide. The wheel is simple, right? A circle that spins. But here's the trick. Someone had to imagine it before anyone ever saw it. Nature doesn't really do perfect circles. No tree, no bone, no rock moves like that. So whoever carved the first one didn't copy, they created. That's the kind of genius that sneaks up on history and changes everything. The oxen snort, tugging at their load. The cart lurches forward, a primitive groan that feels like the first whisper of an engine. The dust kicks up and coats your tongue. It tastes like the beginning of progress. Historians still argue where the wheel was born. Mesopotamia, the steppe, maybe even further east. It shows up around 3500 BCE, right when people start building things they can't carry. And maybe, just maybe, one of those potters who got tired of lifting jars thought, what if the stand moved instead? Necessity meet laziness, your favorite parents of invention. You kneel beside the cart and study the axle. 2 fixed points, 1 moving heart. It's an elegant paradox. The wheel doesn't spin without friction, and friction doesn't vanish without purpose. That same principle powers trains, turbines, and the scrolling motion of your thumb. Every flick across your phone screen is a tribute to this dusty field. Nearby, a group of kids play with smaller wooden discs. They roll them down the slope, laughing as they chase them. One child adds a stick through the center and, boom, reinvents fun. You grin. Somewhere in the future, that's going to become a toy car, a skateboard, a planetarium. Here's the quirky part. Early wheels weren't just for transport, they were status symbols. Fancy carts meant wealth. Rulers would carve scenes of themselves riding in them, looking smug long before Instagram existed. The wheel became the first luxury item that actually moved. You follow the road as it winds into a settlement. A few huts, a well, the smell of dung and dinner mixing under a low sun. People haul grain, spin thread, hammer bronze, and for the first time you notice a strange rhythm to it all. A pulse. Humanity has begun to move in circles. season to season, trade to trade, sunrise to sunrise. Progress, it seems, is round. As the day fades, you rest beside a stream, listening to wheels creak in the distance. They don't know it yet, but this sound will echo forever. On ships, on mills, on gears turning in clock towers and car engines. Every revolution a promise. Move, repeat, improve. You close your eyes, lulled by the steady turning. When you open them, the wheel has become fire again, but hotter, wilder, blinding white. Someone's building a furnace. The air shimmers like a living creature, and the smell is different this time, sharp, mineral, almost electric. You step closer. Inside the fire, stones are melting. The man tending the flames looks half mad with concentration, sweat streaking down his face as he stirs glowing liquid with a rod of clay. Sparks jump like tiny meteors. The hiss and roar swallow everything else. Welcome to the Bronze Age, the world's first industrial revolution minus the coffee breaks. You watch him pour the molten metal into a mold carved from sand and ash. When it cools, he cracks the mold open with a stone. Inside gleams something new, smooth, strong, alive. The crowd gasps. It's a blade, a mirror, maybe both. In this world, reflection and destruction are just two sides of the same invention. Bronze, copper plus tin, wasn't easy to make. Those metals didn't often live in the same neighborhood. Someone had to trade, travel, risk their neck crossing deserts and seas just to mix the right ingredients. And yet they did. Because metal meant power. The kind of power that builds empires, or burns them. Historians still argue whether bronze first appeared in Anatolia or Mesopotamia. Either way, it spread like gossip at a royal feast. Farmers made better plows. Warriors made sharper swords. Artists made jewelry that glittered like trapped sunlight. You run a finger along a finished blade. It's cool now, smooth as river stone. You can see your reflection in it, tired eyes, soot-streaked cheeks, a smile that says, "We did it." A young woman nearby uses the same alloy to craft something unexpected, a curved mirror polished to perfection. She angles it toward the fire, and for a second the reflection catches your eye, dazzling. You realize this isn't just metallurgy, it's philosophy. Humanity is learning to look at itself. A little further down the workshop, another craftsman experiments. He pours bronze into clay tubes, sealing the ends, heating them, testing the expansion. The first pressure test. If it bursts, everyone ducks. You might want to take a step back. Bronze doesn't just shine, it screams when it fails. You do step back and your heel crunches something brittle. You look down, it's a broken ceramic vessel filled with green dust. Someone's been grinding malachite for pigment, turning or into art. Even in the age of weapons, someone still wants to paint. That's humanity for you, can't resist decorating the apocalypse. The air fills with the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, the heartbeat of progress. You start to notice patterns, the same basic shapes repeated everywhere. Circles, lines, spirals. The geometry of life. And you realize invention isn't random, it's a conversation across time. One discovery whispers to the next. You pick up a bronze figurine, its face smooth, its form abstract. It looks strangely modern, like something that could sit in a gallery window in Paris or New York. That's the thing, genius doesn't age. It just waits for better lighting. Night falls and the workshop cools. The fires dim to soft red glows. The metal sings as it contracts, a faint ping like chimes from another world. You feel it in your bones, the first echo of technology, the first hum of human ambition. A craftsman stretches, wipes his brow, and points upward. Same stars, he might be saying. You look and he's right. The constellations haven't changed, though now you notice how their patterns mirror the circles below. Wheels, shields, moons and suns, all repeating shapes in an infinite design. You remember the potter's wheel, the wooden cart, the molten bronze, all spinning, all turning. Everything's in motion, even stillness. You close your eyes again. The sound of hammering softens into something gentler, stones grinding, voices chanting. The air smells like moss and rain. When you open them, you're standing among towering stones arranged in impossible circles. The wind whispers across the fields of Salisbury Plain, and you realize you've arrived at the next invention. Not a tool this time, but a thought so big it needed stones the size of houses just to hold it down. You stand in the open air, the dawn mist rolling across the plains like a sigh from the earth itself. The air feels older here, thick with quiet purpose like it remembers things. Before you looms a ring of giants, pillars of stone stacked with improbable precision, their tops balanced so perfectly it almost seems like they're floating. The grass is damp beneath your feet, and every step you take sounds like a whisper from 5,000 years ago. You move closer. The stones rise taller than houses, some leaning slightly as if tired from holding up the heavens for too long. The wind moans between them, a low, mournful tune that carries the rhythm of ancient ceremony. You pause in the center, the heart of Stonehenge, and tilt your head back. The sun peeks over the horizon, slipping between two uprights like a key sliding into its lock. You realize you're standing inside a calendar that breathes. The alignment is perfect. Midsummer sunrise, midwinter sunset. Every beam of light accounted for, every shadow telling time before clocks ever existed. Humanity has just built its first monument to the sky. Historians still argue about its purpose. Temple, tomb, observatory, but whatever it was, it worked. The builders understood astronomy long before telescopes, geometry long before rulers. And they hauled these stones from miles away without wheels, cranes, or caffeine. Just rope, wood, and sheer willpower. That's either genius or collective stubbornness on a cosmic scale. You brush your hand along one of the sarsen stones. It's cold, gritty, patient. Someone carved it with stone tools, hammering for days to smooth even a single edge. It humbles you how much faith they had in time itself. You imagine a builder lifting his eyes to the sun, thinking if we place this right, it will still greet the dawn when my grandchildren are dust. There's a faint scent of rain and crushed grass. Birds wheel overhead, their cries mingling with the distant bleating of sheep. Yet even the animals seem to know this place isn't ordinary. The air hums with intention. You walk the outer ring, tracing the geometry. Circles within circles. Each stone casting its shadow like a sundial's hand. You remember the potter's wheel and the spinning bronze? It's the same pattern again. Humanity keeps drawing circles, chasing perfection, perhaps because the world itself is round and we just can't resist copying it. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers think Stonehenge was once painted. Bright reds and whites, gleaming under the sun. Hard to picture, right? But imagine it, freshly polished stones glinting like the teeth of gods. The modern ruin is just the skeleton. The living monument was full of color and noise, drums and chants and firelight bouncing off painted rock. You close your eyes and it happens, you hear the beat of drums. Low and steady like a second heartbeat under your own. The ground trembles faintly. You smell smoke and when you open your eyes the scene has changed. It's night now but alive. Torches flicker in hundreds of hands. Dancers move in rhythm around the circle, their shadows leaping high up the stones. The moon hangs enormous overhead, perfectly framed between two pillars. You realize you're witnessing a ritual, a meeting of the sky and earth, human and divine. A priest, or maybe just the local astronomy nerd, lifts a carved bone tube to his eye and peers at the moon. He's measuring something. Angles, distances, cycles. He nods, mutters to an assistant, scratches symbols onto a piece of bark. You smile, the world's first data analyst. Someone tosses grain into the fire, sparks rise like stars. The people cheer. It's not just ceremony, it's science wrapped in awe. They're tracking seasons, harvests, eclipses. Knowledge here isn't hidden in scrolls, it's carved into the horizon itself. Historians still argue how they did it. Without compasses, without cranes, without even writing to coordinate. The precision baffles modern engineers. Did they use ropes and sightlines? Water mirrors for leveling? Or something we haven't rediscovered yet? The mystery makes you grin. There's comfort in not knowing everything. The fire dies to embers, the crowd disperses, and dawn paints the stones pale gold again. The air feels lighter now, as if the world has exhaled. You take one last look around. The stones cast long, perfect shadows stretching like clock hands across the plain. You whisper thanks to the nameless minds that dared to turn sky into architecture. Then the ground trembles again, not from drums this time but from time itself shifting. The air grows hotter, heavier. The scent of dust and incense fills your nose. When you blink, the plain is gone. In its place rises a pyramid, massive, gleaming, flawless against the horizon. You crane your neck upward, but the tip of the Great Pyramid of Giza pierces the blue like a spear aimed at eternity. The scale crushes your breath. Thousands of workers swarm like ants below, hauling limestone blocks that each weigh as much as a car. Their chants rise in unison, rhythmic and strong. It's not chaos, it's choreography. Civilization has leveled up. The heat is unbearable. You wipe sweat from your brow, tasting salt and grit. The stone beneath your hand hums faintly, warm from the sun, smooth from centuries of touch. You trace the precise angle of its slope and realize this isn't guesswork. Its geometry so advanced it makes modern lasers blush. Each side aligns almost perfectly with the cardinal points. North, south, east, west, measured by nothing but stars and patience. The heirs? less than the width of your finger. Historians still argue how they achieved it, sightlines, plumb bobs, alien subcontractors, but the math is undeniable. Whoever did this, they weren't guessing. You follow a line of workers hauling a block on sleds over sand. One man pours water ahead of the runners and suddenly it glides smoother. You blink. That's not superstition, it's physics. Wet sand reduces friction. Modern engineers proved it thousands of years later, but these builders already knew. You laugh softly. Sometimes history feels like a rerun we're only now catching up on. The air shifts cooler as you duck into a narrow tunnel beneath the pyramid. The light dims to amber torch glow. The sound changes too, echoes stretch and twist like whispers from stone. The walls close in, carved so straight it's unnerving. You reach out and brush the surface, it's flawless. No mortar, no gaps, just precision-fitted stone. Your footsteps thud in rhythm like a heartbeat. Deeper in, the smell of stone and dust fills your lungs. You pass shafts so narrow you can barely fit your hand inside. Historians still debate their purpose. Ventilation, symbolic passages, or perhaps star tunnels aimed at Orion and Sirius. You tilt your head and look through one, seeing a single pinpoint of starlight. It's beautiful, eerie, and deliberate. You crouch in the central chamber, staring at the massive granite sarcophagus. It's empty now, but even hollow it feels heavy with meaning. This isn't just a tomb, it's an equation in stone. Every block, every measurement, every angle whispers a number. The pyramid is math made visible, a monument that speaks in geometry instead of words. You breathe in the cool air, faintly metallic, and realize you're inside a machine made for eternity. The silence is thick enough to feel. You press your palm to the wall and sense the vibration of history beneath your skin. Then, somewhere in the dark, a drop of water falls. The echo stretches, bounces, fades. You think of the circle again. The wheel, the stars, the shape of motion and return. Even here, in this angular maze of stone, everything eventually loops. You step back toward the light. Outside, the desert wind roars, scattering sand across your path. The pyramid glows like a beacon, half shadow, half sun. You turn your eyes to it one last time and it almost feels alive. The stones hum faintly, a low vibration that might just be imagination, or maybe the sound of time itself exhaling through the ages. The wind off the desert shifts, tasting faintly of copper and dust. You blink, and the glare of the pyramid's limestone softens into the warm flicker of firelight reflected in molten metal. The clang of chisels fades into rhythmic hammering, and once again humanity's greatest teacher, fire, returns to the stage. You stand in an open-air workshop near the Nile. The sun is sinking but the furnaces still roar. Sparks burst like orange stars as workers pump giant bellows made of leather and reed. The air quivers with heat, the smell of burning charcoal thick enough to chew. This is Egypt's workshop, where earth and flame flirt to make something new. You edge closer, wiping sweat from your brow. Inside a crucible, a man stirs molten bronze. His hands are steady, his eyes glowing with the reflection of fire. He pours the liquid into a sand mold and you watch, hypnotized as it hisses and solidifies. A moment later he cracks it open with a chisel and the gleam of metal flashes. A tool, a blade, a promise. Bronze, copper and tin, the first man-made alloy. A partnership so perfect it's almost romantic. It changed everything, farming, warfare, art, trade. Without it, no pyramids, no plows, no empires. You pick up a cooled fragment. It's smooth, dense, heavier than it looks. It hums faintly in your palm like it remembers its time as liquid fire. Historians still argue where bronze was truly born. Maybe Anatolia, maybe Mesopotamia, maybe multiple places at once. But the effect was the same everywhere. Humanity went from carving stone to sculpting destiny. You smirk. Turns out the Bronze Age wasn't named for the color, it was named for the swagger. The forges roar and around them the city breathes. You can smell grain, smoke and sweat. You can hear merchants haggling in the distance, children laughing, priests chanting to the rhythm of hammer strikes. Civilization isn't just surviving anymore, it's designing. You walk past rows of tools. Chisels for carving hieroglyphs, sickles for harvesting grain, mirrors polished so smooth they show you a version of yourself that seems slightly braver. An artisan tests a small bronze mirror, adjusts his head wrap and grins. Looks good, he might be saying, thousands of years before vanity had its own app. Nearby, a sculptor works on something more delicate. She dips her brush into powdered malachite, mixing it with oil to paint in vibrant greens and blues. The pigments come from the same minerals melted into bronze, proof that beauty and function often share the same roots. You inhale the scent of oil and metal. It's oddly soothing, like history's own perfume. Then you hear laughter, sharp, confident, echoing off stone walls. You turn to see a group of men hauling long bronze tubes toward the riverbank. They're not weapons, they're pipes. Egypt's early plumbers at work. They fit the tubes into narrow trenches, water rushing through them in a musical gurgle. You smile. Even 4,000 years ago, humans knew the joy of running water and the annoyance of leaky joints. You crouch to touch the pipe. It's warm from the sun but cool inside. Bronze resists corrosion, they'd learned, so it carries water for years without rotting away. Is genius born from patience and maybe just a little luck? You look up, and there it is again, the pyramid, golden in the distance. Now you can see how every invention weaves together. Writing to record, wheels to move, bronze to build. It's all connected, a great humming web of innovation powered by the same thought. We can make this better. The light fades. Workers pack up, their silhouettes framed against the dying fire. You linger, listening to the whisper of molten metal cooling, a sound like sighing glass. You step away, the glow dimming behind you, and the desert stretches ahead. The stars emerge, sharp and cold. You realize you've been tracing human progress not in straight lines but in ripples, each invention radiating out, touching the next. And somewhere in those ripples, a new sound begins. It's quieter this time, a scratch, a hum, a whisper of air moving through stone. You follow it. The horizon darkens into a deep violet, and you find yourself at the edge of another world entirely. A ring of massive stones half buried in mist, their shadows long and deliberate. The Bronze Age melts into something older and somehow wiser. You walk among the stones, tracing their weathered faces with your fingertips. Moss clings to the cracks, cold and slick. The air smells of rain, peat, and mystery. Above, stars burn fiercely, unbothered by time. You notice the arrangement, precise, circular, patient. You've seen this before, at Stonehenge, at Nabta Playa, even in the ruins scattered through Brittany. The pattern repeats across continents and cultures. Humanity, it seems, has always loved a good circle. The ground beneath your feet is uneven but alive. You feel a strange pull, as if the stones are waiting for something, maybe you, maybe the sunrise. You settle in the center and sit cross-legged. The silence here isn't empty, it's humming like a frequency just below hearing. Then it happens. The first light of dawn breaks across the horizon, slipping through the gap between two megaliths, slicing through mist and landing directly on a carved mark at your feet. It's no coincidence. You're sitting inside a calendar built from gravity and genius. Historians still argue what these places were for, worship, weather, or wonder, but the precision is undeniable. Every solstice, every equinox, these stones catch the sun like a net catching goldfish. They didn't just mark time, they defined it. A man appears beside you, his skin painted with ochre, his hair braided with feathers. He points at the sun, murmuring in a language you can't understand but somehow feel. He's explaining the pattern, the dance between sky and stone, light and shadow. You realize this isn't superstition. It's science cloaked in ritual. He gestures for you to follow him. You walk between the stones, the dew soaking your ankles. He shows you smaller pits filled with ashes, bits of bone, and charred wood. The remains of feasts, maybe funerals. You imagine music, drums echoing, voices rising with the sun. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some megalithic sites are older than the pyramids. Stonehenge started as wooden posts, later replaced by stones heavier than elephants. The people who moved them didn't have metal tools or wheels, yet they managed feats that would give modern engineers headaches. Some theories even suggest they used sound, drums and chants in unison, to lift and shift the stones. It's a wild idea, but who's to say? The air here already feels like it hums when you breathe. The man leaves you alone in the center again. You tilt your head up and the sky is vast, pure, endless. You realize that for the first time in history, humans weren't just surviving under the sky, they were studying it. Measuring, predicting, mastering. And somewhere deep inside, you feel that same curiosity stir. The same spark that built fires, shaped bronze, and spun wheels. It's the heartbeat of invention, and it's not done yet. The wind shifts again, carrying the scent of something new, spice, ink, and rain on stone. You turn, and far off, across oceans of sand and centuries of dust, you see a glimmer. A city rising in order, its streets straight, its drains whispering clean water. You take a breath. The stones fade and the hum of civilization returns. You're heading east now, toward the Indus, where symmetry itself was once a way of life. The mist clears into sunlight reflected off water, wide canals lined with baked bricks, their edges neat as geometry, homework done by someone who actually cared. The air smells of clay, of rain just passed, and faintly of something citrus-like, crushed reeds and clean earth. You blink, and the stones of the old world give way to a city too organized to be accidental. You've arrived at Mohenjo-Daro, one of the crown jewels of the Indus Valley civilization. Ancient, efficient, and suspiciously modern. You step carefully along a street so straight it looks laser-cut. On both sides, brick houses stand in perfect rows, each one a clone of the next, yet uniquely adorned with painted doors or tiny terraces. You can hear the faint trickle of water beneath your feet, the city's underground drainage system humming like a hidden heartbeat. The sound is soothing, rhythmic, almost smug. You crouch, brush your hand along the brick and smile. These people had plumbing before some of your modern cities had electricity. Every house here connects to a sewage channel, each street to a larger drain, all leading to a vast system outside the city walls. It's not glamorous, but it's revolutionary. Civilization, after all, is built on comfort and cleanliness as much as courage and conquest. You pass a woman drawing water from a well. The pulley creaks softly, the bucket gleams with reflected sunlight. She nods politely, her wrists jingling with copper bangles. Her home, 2 stories tall, has a bathroom with a sloped floor that drains water straight into the street system. You chuckle. Indoor plumbing in 2600 BCE. Historians still argue whether we've really improved on it since. And the streets, oh the streets. Perfectly laid out on a grid, north to south, east to west, like a living map drawn by someone with obsessive architectural tendencies. Every block measured, every corner right-angled. No sprawling chaos, no, turn left where the goat is tied. This city was planned, not grown. And the more you walk, the more you realize, this isn't just a settlement, it's an idea. Order made visible. You pause at a large building rising ahead, its base broad and its top open to the sky. It's the Great Bath, a rectangle of waterproof brick sealed with tar-like bitumen. The steps leading down are worn smooth from centuries of use. You crouch by the edge, trail your fingers through the cool water. It feels sacred somehow, though no gods are named here. Perhaps the gods were cleanliness, balance, and calm. You watch as a few people descend into the bath, their movements slow and deliberate. Maybe it's ritual, maybe hygiene, historians still debate. But as you see their reflections ripple, you think of modern swimming pools, spas, even temples. The urge to purify body and mind never left us. We just added chlorine and marketing. Nearby, merchants gather in the marketplace. The air fills with spice and sound, voices bargaining in a language still undeciphered, scales clinking with copper weights. You pick one up. It's exact to the gram. Standardization, the quiet miracle of trade. The Indus people made sure one trader's measure matched another's across miles of desert. It's bureaucracy in its most elegant form, fairness carved in metal. And then you notice something strange. There are no grand palaces, no towering statues of kings or gods. No golden thrones, no hieroglyphs shouting divine authority. Just balance. Equality baked into every brick. Historians still argue why. Maybe they had no need for ego, or maybe power here was distributed differently. You smile at the thought. A city without kings, running cleaner than most democracies. Imagine that. You pass by workshops. Bead makers threading carnelian stones with drills so fine you can barely see the holes. Potters shaping jars whose curves could make a designer jealous. Metalworkers hammering copper sheets so thin they ring like music when struck. You catch yourself tapping your fingers to the rhythm. It's not hard to imagine this city as a song, each craftsman a note in the grand melody of civilization. Here's a quirky tidbit. Archaeologists once found toy carts and miniature animals buried in children's quarters, tiny replicas of the adult world. Even 4,000 years ago, kids were learning through play. That's right. Lego City Bronze Age Edition. The sun climbs higher, heat shimmering off the rooftops. You step into a shaded alley, the temperature dropping instantly. Ventilation shafts cut through the walls, channeling air like invisible rivers. Passive cooling, millennia before air conditioners. You lean against the brick, the coolness seeping into your back, and let out a quiet sigh. Somewhere an architect from 2600 BCE winks smugly from eternity. A group of men walk past carrying tablets. No, not iPads. Flat pieces of steatite carved with pictographs. Seals they call them. Each one a signature, a logo, a stamp of identity. Bulls, tigers, unicorns. Yes, unicorns. The creature appears often, long before medieval Europe made it trendy. Some think it's symbolic. Others, a clan emblem. Historians still argue, but one thing's certain. These people knew the value of branding. You trail them to a storage area stacked with jars of grain. A scribe squats nearby, pressing marks into a soft clay tablet. Accounting again, the eternal art of knowing who owes what. You watch the numbers form and realize how writing, plumbing, and trade intertwine. Civilization is just problem-solving on repeat. As dusk settles, the city softens. The sky turns peach and violet, and the canals shimmer like mirrors. From rooftops, people light small lamps, their flames dancing like constellations brought to earth. You climb a staircase to watch. The city hums, not with machines but with harmony. For a moment you wonder what happened. How something so advanced, so peaceful, could vanish. Historians still argue about that too. Floods, droughts, shifting rivers, or something more mysterious. You glance toward the dark horizon and think of all the cities that would rise and fall after this one. Each believing itself eternal. Each eventually reduced to dust and questions. You take one last look at the great bath gleaming under the moon. The ripples look like silver ink writing a story you almost understand. Then, slowly, the scene melts away. You hear waves again, but not from a river. These are salter, rougher. The air smells of brine, of olives, of sun-baked stone. You open your eyes to find yourself on a coastline scattered with marble fragments. Greece, glowing white under a sky so blue it looks freshly painted. And there, half buried in coral and seaweed, something gleams. Bronze again, but finer, intricate, like clockwork lost to time. You wade closer, your feet sinking into sand, and brush away the silt. The gears catch the sunlight, teeth interlocked in elegant silence. You're holding the heart of a mystery, the Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient Greek device that shouldn't exist, and yet here it is. You turn it in your hands, tracing the inscriptions faintly etched into the corroded metal. You can almost hear the ticking, almost feel the ghost of movement. 1,000 years before mechanical clocks, someone built this, to track planets, predict eclipses, measure time with frightening precision. Historians still argue how. Some call it the first computer, others a toy for philosophers. You grin. Maybe both. Humanity never did separate science from play for very long. The sea breeze stiffens and gulls cry overhead. You glance back once more toward the direction of the Indus Valley, now lost beyond horizon and memory. Each invention leads to the next. Water into gears, clay into code, order into wonder. The tide laps at your ankles and you realize you're standing between two worlds. One of earth, one of motion. The sun dips lower, gilding the waves in bronze. The gears in your hand seem to catch the light and hold it for a heartbeat, as if remembering how to turn. The sea air fades to something drier, sharper, sunlight bouncing off white stone, the scent of sand, sweat, and old math. You blink, and the Aegean coast sharpens into focus. Limestone cliffs, olive groves, and a city whose streets gleam like polished ivory. Athens hums beneath a merciless sun, full of talk, trade, and the sound of bronze tools tinkering against marble. You follow the clang into a workshop cluttered with gears, pulleys, and scrolls. On a wooden table lies the strange, corroded box you saw in the sea, the Antikythera Mechanism, but here it's alive, newly built, gleaming like captured lightning. A young man adjusts a dial, and suddenly the device clicks into motion. Wheels within wheels turn with hypnotic precision. Numbers crawl across bronze rings and a small sphere spins at the edge. Earth, the tiny diva of its own cosmic dance. The craftsman, perhaps a student of Archimedes, maybe a nameless genius, leans in, muttering calculations. Sun at 12 degrees Leo, he whispers. You blink. You're watching someone track the heavens on a machine that shouldn't exist for another 1,500 years. Historians still argue whether it was a navigational tool, an astronomical calculator, or a philosopher's toy. What's certain is this: the Greeks understood gears not just as parts but as thoughts made visible. You touch the side and the vibration hums faintly through your fingertips. You can almost feel the orbit of the moon turning beneath your skin. Around you the workshop smells of oil and beeswax. Scrolls clutter every corner. Diagrams of circles, planetary alignments, and notes on how to predict eclipses. You squint at one margin and notice something scribbled in Greek. Cosmos and Kinei, the universe in motion. You smile. Somewhere, a YouTube algorithm is jealous of how poetic that line is. The craftsman turns a crank. Observe, he says, gesturing at a small dial inscribed with numbers and symbols. The gears whir, the metal ticks, and the little sphere completes a perfect orbit in seconds. It's not magic, it's math with rhythm. The first analog simulation. The first model of the universe small enough to hold in your hands. You glance around. On one wall, a half-finished sundial glints. On another, sketches of catapults, pumps, and early steam toys. You realize you're standing in a world that believes curiosity itself is sacred. A philosopher walks in, robes fluttering, beard long enough to trip on. He peers at the device, nods solemnly, and mutters something about understanding the order of the cosmos. Then, without warning, he sneezes from the metal dust, blinks and mutters, "Perhaps the gods disapprove of gears." You grin. Philosophy and allergy, an immortal combo. The workshop fades into the open air. You're walking along marble columns, the chatter of the agora echoing around you. Merchants sell scrolls of geometry next to figs and olives. Children play with toy carts. Somewhere, Socrates is probably annoying someone with another question. The whole city feels like an idea given form. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some historians believe the Antikythera mechanism wasn't unique. There may have been many lost to war, fire, or boredom. The ancient Greeks may have built machines centuries ahead of anyone else, then simply stopped. What? Perhaps it was too expensive. Perhaps it was too weird. Or maybe, as one scholar half-joked, they just forgot to hit save. You can't help but feel a pang of sadness. So much brilliance scattered like bronze dust. Yet the echoes survive, in clock towers, in watches, in the tick of every second that ever passed since. The sound of ticking shifts into something heavier, steadier. Boots on stone, the stomp of soldiers, the grind of chariot wheels. The marble under your feet turns rougher, patched with dust. You look up to see an aqueduct arching overhead, carrying silver streams of water across the hills like veins in a god's arm. You've stepped into the Roman Empire where engineering doesn't dream, it conquers. The heat smells of dust and iron. Men in tunics shout orders, laying stones for another road straight as an arrow. You crouch to examine the layers, gravel, sand, limestone, pressed tight by decades of traffic. You can feel the heartbeat of an empire underfoot. Historians still argue how Rome managed such perfection without GPS or Google Maps, but standing here you get it: discipline, mathematics, and stubborn pride. Their motto might as well have been measure twice, conquer once. A cart rattles past, its iron wheels biting into stone grooves polished by time. You follow it through a city gate, flanked by walls so high they hum when the wind hits them. The air cools slightly, carrying the smell of bread baking somewhere unseen. Then, faintly at first, you hear water, rushing, murmuring, singing through stone. You follow the sound to the source, an aqueduct. It stretches for miles, its arches glowing gold in the sun. At its base, fountains spill clear water into marble basins. Women fill clay jars, laughing. Children splash and shriek. You realize you're watching one of humanity's greatest flexes, plumbing on an imperial scale. The Romans built these channels with a precision that still works. Some aqueducts run for 50 miles, with a slope so gentle it drops barely an inch per 100 feet. No pumps, no motors, just gravity, patience, and genius. You run your hand along the stone, slick with condensation, and feel history's pulse racing. Here's a fringe tidbit. They even had public toilets with running water. Whole rooms of marble seats arranged in neat rows, no walls, everyone chatting about taxes while the river gurgled beneath. Civilization, apparently, has always balanced comfort with awkward eye contact. You walk farther into the city, the streets paved with basalt slabs so polished they glint like obsidian. The grooves of countless wheels mark centuries of motion. Above, Roman arches curve like frozen rainbows. Everything feels engineered to last forever. But the real marvel isn't the stone, it's the system. Roads connecting continents, aqueducts feeding cities, concrete stronger than steel. Even their recipe for concrete, pozzolana, lime, volcanic ash, has outlived empires. Some modern engineers are still trying to reverse engineer it, scratching their heads while 2,000-year-old harbors shrug off the sea. You pause on a bridge watching water shimmer below. For a moment, the reflection bends, ripples, reforms, and suddenly the arches of the aqueduct shift into something paper-thin, the sound of water turning into the scratch of brush on bamboo. The scene morphs again. The air grows damp, fragrant with ink and smoke. A river curls through green hills, dotted with rooftops of curved tile. A new world dawns before you, the ancient heart of China, where invention doesn't shout. It whispers through silk and powder and the quiet rustle of paper. The circle continues to turn. The world smells of rain and ink. Mist drifts between green mountains like silk scarves, and the river murmurs softly below you, bending through rice terraces carved in patient spirals. You breathe in the sweetness of bamboo smoke and realize you've arrived somewhere older than memory yet endlessly inventive, ancient China, where ideas take form as gently as brushstrokes. You walk through a courtyard alive with sound, paper crackling, hammers tapping, the faint whistle of wind chimes. The walls are lined with scrolls, hundreds of them painted and written with careful precision. A man in a scholar's robe dips a brush into a dish of dark liquid, lifts it, and draws a single flowing character across pale paper. The ink glides and you can smell the faint scent of pine soot. The line is perfect, alive, balanced, eternal. Paper. It seems simple now, disposable even, but this thin sheet changed the world. Long before Europe was scratching on animal skin, China had turned humble bark and rags into the foundation of literature, government, and art. You lift one scroll, run your hand over it. It's soft, light, yet strong. 1,000 words can live here without fading. Historians still argue exactly when paper was born. Most credit Kai Luan in the Han Dynasty around 105 CE, but others whisper it came earlier, hidden in humble workshops. Either way, it spread like wildfire, carrying poetry and philosophy on its weightless wings. You glance around and everywhere people write. Poets under plum trees, accountants at bamboo desks, lovers exchanging folded notes sealed with wax. The rustle of paper becomes the heartbeat of civilization. You can almost hear Confucius sigh approvingly somewhere in the ether. Here's a quirky tidbit. Early paper wasn't white, it came in soft yellows, browns, even blues. Some sheets were perfumed with herbs to repel insects or to make imperial memos smell important. Imagine getting your taxes scented like jasmine. Bureaucracy never looked, or smelled, so refined. You step outside, the sunlight diffused through clouds. From a nearby workshop comes a sharp, sulfurous scent. You follow it, coughing lightly. Inside, 3 alchemists crouch over clay pots, muttering. The air pops and sizzles. One grins mischievously as sparks flash, tiny bursts of gold that dance and vanish. Gunpowder. Black powder to be exact. Sulfur, charcoal, saltpeter. A blend that would forever change war, celebration, and weekend fireworks. The first alchemists weren't chasing explosions, they were chasing immortality. Turns out they found mortality's favorite toy instead. The room shakes with a faint boom. Everyone ducks, then bursts into laughter. You wipe soot off your face and grin. The alchemist coughs, eyes watering, and mumbles, "Too much saltpeter." You nod solemnly, suppressing a chuckle. Humanity's first chemistry lab report. Oops. Historians still argue where exactly the formula came from, but by the Tang dynasty it was everywhere. First as fireworks for the heavens, then as weapons for emperors. It's strange, isn't it? One discovery, 2 destinies, joy and destruction, both equally dazzling. You step out again, blinking in the bright courtyard. Children chase firework ashes drifting like snow, laughing as the wind swirls them away. Somewhere in the distance, drums roll, announcing another invention being born. You follow the sound through narrow lanes until you reach a darkened room filled with polished stones, metal needles, and bowls of water. A scholar leans over one, humming softly. He places a thin sliver of magnetized iron on the surface, and it trembles, then spins until it points north. The world's first compass, a tool so quietly revolutionary it would reshape exploration itself. You watch his face glow in awe as the needle steadies. He scribbles notes on a bamboo slip, eyes shining. "The earth breathes," he whispers, tracing lines of invisible force. He has no idea he's holding the key to global navigation, to maps, to everything that moves beyond the horizon. Here's a strange thought. If the wheel taught humanity how to move, the compass taught it how to return. One keeps you going, the other keeps you found. Outside, travelers pack their ships. Paper maps folded neatly, gunpowder packed in barrels for protection and celebration alike. You can hear the creak of ropes, the flap of sails. China is preparing to meet the world, not through conquest but curiosity. And yet, standing here, you sense something bittersweet. Invention after invention, each centuries ahead, yet so often born in silence, credited later to others, swallowed by time and translation. You whisper a quiet thank you into the wind for the nameless hands that made the modern world possible. The wind shifts again, carrying the faint sound of drums, not war drums this time, but something ceremonial, ancient. A heartbeat echoing through the jungle. You turn toward the sound and the mist returns, thicker now, scented with rain and stone. The green horizon parts to reveal a staircase rising out of the forest. Each step gleams with moisture, the air alive with the chirr of cicadas. You climb slowly, the canopy opening above you to reveal the massive stone faces of the Maya world. Temples touch the clouds, carvings tell stories of time itself. The sound of the jungle fades into something slower, deeper, a calendar ticking in stone. The jungle breathes around you, thick, humid, alive. Every leaf drips with water, every stone hums with history. You climb the final steps of a vast temple as sunlight spears through clouds, painting gold across endless green. The air smells of limestone, smoke and honeyed maize. You've arrived in the land of the Maya, where time itself has a pulse. You stand atop the pyramid of Kukulkan, and below you, the city of Chichen Itza stretches out in perfect alignment. Roads radiate like spokes from a wheel, each one leading to temples, observatories and courtyards where voices rise in ritual rhythm. You squint toward the horizon, the great ball court, the temple of warriors, the sacred cenote, all precisely placed as though drawn by invisible geometry. Nothing here is random. Not the steps, not the shadows, not even the spaces between them. A priest in a feathered headdress walks beside you, his face painted with streaks of black and red. He carries a bark paper codex, the ink gleaming darkly in the sun. You peek over his shoulder and see columns of numbers written in dots and bars. Base 20 mathematics, simple and elegant. Zero is there too, a concept many later civilizations would take centuries to rediscover. The Maya didn't just invent calendars, they quantified infinity. He stops at the edge and raises a hand toward the sun. Shadows fall sharply along the pyramid's northern staircase. Each equinox, the light forms a serpent that seems to slither down the steps, the feathered god Quetzalcoatl descending from the heavens. The crowd below gasps softly. You feel goosebumps ripple across your arms. This isn't coincidence, it's architecture in conversation with the cosmos. Historians still argue how they achieved such precision without telescopes or compasses. Some say centuries of observation, others whisper of lost tools. But you can see it in their faces. These people didn't separate science from spirit. Measuring the stars was an act of worship. Aligning a temple was a prayer made permanent. You follow the priest down the stairs where scribes sit cross-legged, their fingers stained with ink. They record everything, eclipses, harvests, dynasties, even the gods' moods. Their script curls across the pages like vines, alive with loops and eyes. The sound of scratching quills is constant, steady, eternal. You realize you're walking through a library disguised as a city. And yet, for all this order, there's joy. In the courtyard, children chase each other with clay balls. Vendors shout about cacao and jade. Musicians blow into bone flutes shaped like birds. Civilization hums here too, not with machines but with rhythm. Here's a quirky tidbit. Archaeologists found ancient sound tests in these plazas. Clap your hands at the base of the main staircase, and the echo returns not as a clap but as the chirp of a quetzal, the sacred bird of the gods. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the architects tuned stone the way you tune a guitar. Either way, it's acoustic wizardry centuries ahead of time. You wander toward the observatory, the El Caracol. It rises like a snail shell, spiraled and smooth. Inside, narrow windows pierce the thick walls, each one framing a specific celestial event. Venus at dawn, solstice sunrise, lunar zenith. You tilt your head and follow the beams of light cutting through the darkness. This is no ordinary tower. It's a time machine carved from stone. The astronomer priest gestures for you to look through one slit. You see the morning star shimmering low in the sky. Venus, he murmurs reverently. They tracked it for centuries, predicting its cycles with astonishing accuracy. To them, it wasn't just a planet, it was a messenger, a heartbeat linking heaven and earth. Historians still argue about the infamous Maya calendar. Remember 2012? The Doomsday Panic? Turns out, the Maya never predicted the end of the world, just the end of one cosmic cycle and the beginning of another. To them, time was circular, not linear. Every ending was just another dawn. You smile, remembering that you've seen this pattern before: the wheel, the sun, the turning of stars over pyramids. Humanity's favorite shape. The circle returns again. Night falls over the jungle. The sky above Chichen Itza erupts with stars, so many it's hard to tell where the heavens end and the temples begin. You lie back on warm stone, listening to the cicadas and the distant sound of drums. The stars feel closer here, as if leaning down to whisper. Somewhere nearby, the priest begins chanting softly, counting the stars like old friends. The numbers roll off his tongue, exact, melodic. The Maya didn't just gaze upward. They mapped the sky into centuries, their mathematics pulsing with cosmic grace. A cool wind stirs. You close your eyes, feeling the temple hum beneath your back. The cadence of the chant slows, becomes softer, merges with the night. And then, like a page turning, the sound fades. When you open your eyes, the stars are gone. The air is dry again, sharp, humming faintly. You hear something whistling softly through stone corridors. The scent of sand and spice returns, and in the distance, a low roar of desert wind. You've traveled west, far west, into Persia. You find yourself standing at the edge of a sun-baked courtyard. Tall towers rise around you, hollow inside, open at the top, badgers, wind catchers. The air shimmers with heat, yet as you step inside one of these towers, a cool breeze wraps around you like silk. The temperature drops instantly. You close your eyes, sighing with relief. No gears. No engines. Just gravity, airflow, and elegance. This is the genius of the Persian wind catcher, an air conditioner built from clay and cunning. Each tower captures the faintest breeze, channels it downward into the living quarters, and exhales hot air through hidden vents. It's quiet, sustainable, and perfect. Historians still argue who first designed them, perhaps Yazd, perhaps older, but even today they stand working flawlessly. You trace a finger along the smooth inner wall, still damp from the flow of cooled air. The ingenuity feels alive. 1,000 years before Freon, humans learned to chill the desert. Outside, children play in the shade while merchants rest near fountains. The sound of running water mixes with birdsong. You realize the city breathes, literally, every structure part of a living machine that manages heat, water, and light with natural grace. You glance up at the wind catcher again, its shadow stretching long and slender like a sundial. It doesn't just cool homes, it measures time by movement of air. A gray-bearded architect joins you, smiling. Hot air rises, he explains, gesturing toward the vents. Cool air sinks. Nature is our engineer. You grin. Somewhere, an HVAC designer just felt a pang of professional jealousy. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Persian architects built secret underground water channels, canets, that carried mountain water across miles, feeding fountains and even cooling air as it passed through wind catchers. It's an early form of geothermal air conditioning, wrapped in poetry. You wander through narrow streets, your hands brushing adobe walls. Every alley bends to catch shade, every window sits where light turns softest. The entire city is a collaboration between humans and weather. No waste, no noise, just harmony. And as you walk, you start to hear something new beneath the quiet. A low hum, a whisper of direction. Not air this time, but instinct. Something ancient and northern stirs in the distance. Sea salt, fog, the creak of wood on waves. The desert wind carries you onward, cooling as it fades, until you find yourself standing on the prow of a ship, wrapped in fur, facing the gray horizon. The air tastes like storm and freedom. You smile. The journey isn't over. The circle keeps turning. You grip the railing of the longship as it cuts through mist-thick waters. The sea breathes in slow, heavy waves, smelling of salt, tar, and distant thunder. The sky above is gray and endless, the kind that makes you forget what warmth ever felt like. The ship creaks and moans, each plank singing an old song of motion. You pull your fur cloak tighter, feeling the damp sting of wind against your cheeks. You're sailing with the Vikings, those infamous navigators, traders, raiders, poets, and accidental historians of the North. The prow ahead of you rises like a beast, carved into a dragon's head, its mouth open in eternal roar. But the men on deck are quiet. Their eyes are fixed on the fog. No compass here. No GPS, no stars visible. Yet somehow they know where they're going. You watch as a burly sailor reaches into a leather pouch and pulls out a crystal, translucent, pale as ice. He holds it up, turning it slowly in the faint light. The crystal catches something unseen, a faint beam slicing through the fog. He nods, points north. The ship adjusts course. A sunstone, Iceland spar, calcite, legendary crystal of navigation. It splits light, even through clouds, revealing the sun's hidden position. Historians still argue whether Vikings really used it, or whether it's just a saga-born myth. But the science checks out, it works. You could almost call it the world's first analog GPS, powered by sunlight and stubbornness. The man catches you watching and grins, teeth white against his beard. He tosses you the crystal. You hold it, amazed at how it glows faintly in the fog as though alive. The ship rolls, spray splashing your face. You laugh and hand it back, wiping seawater from your lips. Good luck charm, he says, winking. You suspect it's more than that. The crew gets to work, ropes creak, oars dip in unison, and a low hum rises as they sing, steady and strong. You feel it in your bones, the rhythm of the sea, the pulse of navigation older than memory. You wander below deck, ducking under a beam. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and saltfish. A woman sits cross-legged by a small oil lamp, stitching torn sails. She hums softly, a lullaby in Old Norse that somehow feels familiar. You glance around, shields stacked, axes hung neatly, coils of rope piled like sleeping snakes. Here's a quirky tidbit. Viking ships were so perfectly balanced that they could sail in shallow rivers as easily as open sea. The keel, slender and strong, let them pivot, glide, even beach themselves. Some historians call the longship humanity's first amphibious vehicle. You look at the curves of the hull, the symmetry, the way it flexes with the water. It's not warcraft, it's art. You climb back up to the deck. The wind tears at your hair, but you can see a thin line ahead, land. A sailor beside you raises a raven into the air. The bird beats its wings and vanishes into the gray. Everyone waits. A minute passes. Then there, a cry. The raven returns, feathers dripping, but its flight is different now, angled, purposeful. The sailor nods. Land east, he says. Raven reconnaissance, nature's radar. The coastline rises out of fog, cliffs like giant bones capped with moss and ice. The crew cheers softly, relief disguised as pride. They steer toward a narrow fjord, the water calming as you enter its embrace. The scent of pine and wet earth replaces the sea's salt bite. The Vikings knew this dance, between storm and shelter, between discovery and return. Their maps weren't on parchment but in memory, in muscle, in sky. Each voyage a lesson passed by voice, not ink. You can almost hear the ghosts of old captains muttering advice in the wind. Historians still argue how far they went, Greenland, Vinland, maybe even the Americas centuries before Columbus. Standing here you believe it? These people could cross oceans with instinct alone. Theirs was not luck, it was skill honed into legend. You follow them ashore, boots sinking into black sand. The land smells of smoke and iron. Men set up camp, axes biting into trees. Women unpack goods, furs, amber, carved trinkets. The sound of laughter mingles with hammering. The Vikings weren't just raiders, they were builders, merchants, settlers. Where they landed, towns grew. As night falls, the sky clears. The aurora flickers, green ribbons unfurling across the heavens. You lie back on cold grass, the lights dancing silently above. Someone nearby strums a lyre, its notes fragile as frost. You close your eyes and for a moment, the creak of the ship returns in your ears, now slower, softer, blending into your heartbeat. When you open them again, the northern lights fade into firelight. The air smells of iron and sweat instead of pine and salt. Sparks rise into a darkened sky. You're no longer among sailors, you're in a forge. The hammer strikes ring sharp and steady. The heat presses against your face. A blacksmith stands before an anvil, shaping something that glows like captured sunlight. You take a step closer and see the pattern in the metal, rippling, watery, alive. It's not bronze or simple iron. It's steel, wood steel from ancient India, famed across continents. The smith dunks the blade into oil, it hisses, steaming. He lifts it again and the surface shines with a texture like flowing silk. Damascus steel, the world will later call it. Strong, flexible, beautiful. Its secret lost for centuries. Historians still argue how they achieved such purity, carbon control, crucible chemistry, maybe even meteorite iron. Whatever the method, it was genius disguised as craft. You touch the edge lightly, it's so sharp it whispers. Nearby, another craftsman prepares herbs, grinding them into a powder. The scent is strange, spicy, metallic, familiar. You glance over his shoulder and freeze. This isn't a blacksmith, it's a surgeon. You're in an ancient Indian clinic. Brass instruments gleam on the table, scalpels, forceps, needles. They shine like stars. He moves with calm precision, stitching a man's nose with horsehair thread. No anesthesia, no panic, just quiet trust. You remember that centuries later, Europe will rediscover plastic surgery, unaware that Sushruta wrote the book on it here first, literally. The Sushruta Samhita, the ancient surgical manual, listing hundreds of operations, instruments, and herbal remedies. You stand still awed. The air smells faintly of antiseptic herbs and smoke. The surgeon wipes his brow, smiles faintly, and says something about balance, between blade and body, heat and healing. You nod, speechless. The forge and the clinic share a heartbeat. Creation and care born from the same fire. Here's a quirky detail. Early Indian surgeons used leeches to clean wounds, not glamorous but effective. Nature was their pharmacy, their laboratory. And when you think about it, their philosophy wasn't far from modern science. Test, observe, refine. Repeat until the patient smiles again. You glance between the blacksmith and the healer, both working under the same torchlight, both turning raw materials into miracles. You realize that invention isn't just about tools, it's about empathy. Every spark, every stroke meant to make life a little better, a little longer, a little more human. You step outside. The night is calm, the stars distant but watchful. Somewhere behind you, hammers strike and sutures tie, each beat sinking to your pulse. The world has moved from clay to metal, from guessing to knowing. And yet the circle continues, because for every mystery solved, another quietly forms. The breeze carries the faint scent of parchment and glass. You turn, following it. A desert horizon glows faintly, domes rising under moonlight. Lamps shimmer behind latticed windows. A voice murmurs softly, rhythmic, curious. The next chapter awaits, the Islamic Golden Age, where light itself will be dissected and reason rewritten. The desert horizon shimmers like liquid gold, then dissolves into domes and courtyards of sun-baked clay. You smell dates, ink, and a faint sweetness of rosewater drifting through the evening breeze. Lamps flicker behind lattice windows, their glow spilling across tiled streets. Somewhere a call to prayer lingers, low, melodic, carrying peace and promise through the cooling air. You've entered Baghdad, around the 9th century CE, heart of the Islamic Golden Age. Here knowledge itself is currency. Scrolls travel farther than armies, and ideas spread faster than trade caravans. The city hums not with noise but with thought. You walk under an archway into the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. Inside, the air smells of parchment and possibility. Shelves groan under scrolls from Greece, Persia, India, Egypt. Scholars bend over desks, translating, annotating, arguing in half a dozen languages. Arabic, Greek, Sanskrit, Latin, they weave together like threads in a single tapestry. A man in a blue robe waves you over. His eyes are bright, curious. Watch carefully, he says, adjusting a glass lens. The sunlight from the courtyard filters through it, scattering on the wall into rainbows. Light bends, he murmurs, but how? You realize you're standing beside Ibn al-Haytham, the father of optics. He places another glass sphere beside it and points. It is not the eye that emits sight, he explains patiently. It is the light that enters. You can hear centuries of superstition cracking under the weight of reason. Historians still argue how his experiments influenced later Europe, but his book of optics traveled the world, shaping Galileo's telescope, Kepler's theories, even the lens of the camera you might hold today. You watch him experiment with reflections in bowls of water, adjusting angles with quiet precision. It feels both ancient and astonishingly modern. Nearby, another scholar sits cross-legged, scribbling lines of symbols, loops, squares, dots. You peek closer and realize their equations. Al-Jabr, he mutters, frowning thoughtfully. You recognize the name centuries before it becomes algebra. Al-Khwarizmi, the mathematician whose work will someday give birth to algorithms, and yes, even the word algorithm itself. He looks up, sees you staring, and grins. Mathematics, he says, tapping his parchment, is how we describe the will of the universe without poetry. You chuckle softly. And what about poetry? He shrugs. For that, we have coffee. Speaking of which, the smell of roasted beans drifts through the air. A young assistant carries in a copper tray of steaming cups, the aroma rich and earthy. You take a sip, bitter, smooth, awakening. The first coffee houses in history would rise here soon, buzzing with debate and laughter. Civilization runs on caffeine, it seems, long before it ran on electricity. You wander deeper into the House of Wisdom. A physician unwraps surgical instruments gleaming under lamplight. Fine needles, scalpels, forceps. Tools so precise you'd expect them in a modern clinic. Al-Zarawi, someone whispers reverently, the great Andalusian surgeon whose medical texts will guide Europe's doctors for 500 years. He's demonstrating a procedure on a wax model, explaining calmly how to stitch arteries with silk thread. Around him, students watch wide-eyed. You feel a chill. Somewhere, the spirit of Sushruta, the Indian healer you met before, must be smiling. Across continents, across time, knowledge is shaking hands. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some of these doctors prescribed laughter for pain and storytelling for sleeplessness. You grin, you're technically following their advice right now. You step outside as dusk paints the sky rose and indigo. The Tigris River glitters below the city walls, reflecting the golden domes above. A scholar kneels by the water, studying its flow. He places a small wheel in the stream, watching it turn gently. Hydrodynamics. Centuries before Newton drops an apple. The hum of Baghdad fades as night deepens. Lanterns glow like constellations across the rooftops. You find yourself gazing upward again, drawn to the stars that inspired every scholar you've met. They glitter like notes on an eternal chart, waiting to be read. And then the world ripples again. The lamps stretch taller, dimmer, replaced by flickering candles and iron sconces. You hear gears turning, wooden clacks, the faint tick of something too regular to be random. The air smells of oil, wood, and damp stone. You've stepped into the medieval age of automata, the mechanical dream before electricity. You walk through a workshop filled with wooden figures, birds that flap, lions that roar, musicians that play lutes with delicate precision. A man in robes, eyes bright with obsession, winds a crank and grins as one of the machines pours a goblet of wine all by itself. Al-Jazari, someone murmurs. You nod. The same mind that gave the world water clocks, camshafts, and gears that would power everything from windmills to modern engines. Historians still argue whether his devices were art, entertainment, or precursors to robotics. Standing here, you know it's all three. You press your ear close to one of his fountains. The gears turn, water trickles, birds sing. It's engineering that sounds like music. Here's a quirky detail. One of Al-Jazari's clocks featured a scribe who moved his pen every half hour. At the end of the day he dropped it, mechanically, into a basket. The first timesheet? Possibly. Even robots needed work-life balance. You wander past his table where a half-built automaton rests, a peacock made of brass, its feathers half attached. Every creature, he says softly, is a machine designed by God. I only imitate what I can see. You nod, the truth heavy and luminous all at once. As you step outside, the moon has risen high. The fountains murmur softly. Somewhere, water flows into a hidden basin, gears whispering beneath the surface. Feels like the whole city breathes through invisible motion. You pause and look around. The hum of progress has quieted. The world is poised on the edge of another transformation, one of rediscovery, of light dimming and then rising again in new lands. And as the gears slow, the air shifts once more. You hear seagulls, the flap of sails, the smell of salt and lemon blossoms. You open your eyes to find yourself on a Mediterranean dock, parchment in hand, the ink still wet. Ahead of you, ships ready for the Renaissance. Behind you, centuries of invention waiting patiently in the dark. The gulls wheel overhead, their cries slicing through the hum of a bustling port. You blink against sunlight glinting off polished brass instruments and ship masts strung like harp strings against a turquoise sky. The air tastes of salt, sawdust, and ambition. Venice? Alexandria? Maybe both. The scent of invention travels faster than borders. You walk the wooden docks, boots thudding softly. A cart creaks by, piled with crates of glass lenses, some round, some convex, some warped into strange shapes. The merchant leans close and whispers, straight from Murano, as though selling magic itself. You pick one up. The world blurs, then sharpens. A gull overhead becomes a comet. You grin. The age of optics has begun. Historians still argue who invented the first eyeglasses. Italy, perhaps the late 13th century, but whoever did gave humanity a second chance at clarity. You slip one on and the horizon leaps into focus. Imagine the relief of monks squinting over tiny manuscripts, suddenly able to see again. For them, this was resurrection disguised as glass. A lens maker nearby polishes his wares with meticulous care, breath fogging the surface. His hands tremble slightly, he's old, maybe half blind. Yet he smiles. I make what I can no longer use, he murmurs. There's poetry in that, sight built by those losing it. You step inside a nearby workshop. Wooden beams groan under the weight of scrolls, globes, and brass instruments. A young apprentice points eagerly to a curious contraption, a long tube lined with lenses. He peers through it, gasps, then hands it to you. You raise it to your eye and the moon fills your vision, closer, detailed, luminous. It's primitive, clunky, but revolutionary. The telescope's ancestor, perhaps even Galileo's prototype. You can almost feel history holding its breath. You turn the tube slightly, watching the light refract. Every star looks like a whisper of math, every planet like a promise. Here's a quirky tidbit. Early telescopes were called spyglasses, and were as popular among pirates as philosophers. A good one could spot an approaching fleet, or a particularly promising tavern, miles away. You chuckle softly, imagining a philosopher and a pirate arguing over who saw it first. Outside, the harbor swells with shouts. Sailors pack crates marked with strange symbols, Arabic, Greek, Latin. The world's knowledge is literally being shipped out. You smell ink, leather, and seaweed as you pass scholars debating astronomy, theology, navigation. Europe's Renaissance has begun, but its heart beats with borrowed blood, from Baghdad, from Cairo, from Damascus. The wind picks up, carrying the dry scent of parchment. You follow it inland, where candlelight spills from a cathedral window. Inside, mathematicians scribble frantic notes, their fingers blackened with soot and ink. Lines, arcs, ratios, they're obsessed with a single idea: perfection. Light obeys, says a man with spectacles perched crookedly on his nose. He bends glass, experiments with prisms, traces beams with chalk on the floor. He smiles faintly. God speaks through geometry. You nod, remembering Ibn al-Haytham's words, "It is not the eye that sees but the light that enters." The echo travels 1,000 years and still hums true. Historians still argue whether faith hindered or helped science here, but to these thinkers the two weren't enemies. They were mirror images, one searching upward, the other inward. The light from their candles flickers over sketches that look suspiciously like early diagrams of machines. Wheels, pumps, even wings. You pause by a table scattered with notes on flight. Leonardo, perhaps. The ink is dense, looping. Drawings of wings, gears, pulleys. Human ambition scribbled in feather and steel. You smile. He's not chasing the sky, he's dissecting it. The air thickens again, heavy with oil and dust. The candlelight shifts into sunlight filtered through soot-stained windows. The hum of Latin chants fades into clattering gears and the clang of hammers. The industrial embryo of medieval Europe has begun to stir. You step into a vast hall filled with wooden frames, water wheels, and intricate automata. Men in rough aprons adjust weights, oil cogs, and mutter to themselves. The air smells like wet stone and ambition. You've entered a forgotten chapter. Medieval machines before machines. At the center stands a monstrous clock tower. Its gears are exposed, turning with hypnotic rhythm. A bell rings out, echoing through the rafters. But this isn't just a clock, it's a masterpiece of motion. Figures of saints move in procession. A rooster crows on the hour, angels wave their wings. You watch amazed. This is timekeeping as theater, engineering as devotion. A craftsman climbs a ladder, adjusting a counterweight. "Built for the abbey," he says proudly. "She keeps the monks honest." You grin. Humanity's first productivity tracker. Historians still argue whether these inventions mark the true start of automation. Some call them toys, others call them ancestors of industry. But watching the gears spin, perfect, predictable, uncomplaining, you can't help but feel a chill of recognition. Every clock tower, every assembly line, every algorithm begins here, in sawdust and patience. Nearby, another device ticks, a water clock from Al-Jazari's design, adapted and refined. Water drips with the precision of seconds, pushing gears that turn tiny figures marking the hours. You bend closer, the droplets gleaming in dim light. The steady rhythm feels alive, almost human. Here's a quirky fact. Some cathedrals hired monks solely to oil the gears, lest divine time starts squeaking. Imagine it, holiness measured in viscosity. The hall smells of brass and pine. You notice something small on a nearby table, a wooden bird, its feathers jointed with string. The craftsman twists a crank, and it flaps clumsily, wings clicking. He laughs, delighted. You do too. It's not perfect flight yet, but it's hope carved in oak. You watch the gears spin, mesmerized. The air hums with rhythm, each tick echoing across centuries. You've seen it all before: rotation, repetition, refinement. The wheel that once rolled through Mesopotamia now counts seconds, now mimics life. The craftsman wipes his brow and gazes at the sunlight spilling through the window. Dust dances in the beam like tiny golden planets. "Machines," he says softly, "are our mirrors. They do what we do, only better." You glance down at your reflection in a polished gear, blurred, warped, infinite. You smile faintly. He's right. Outside, the bells toll noon. The city stirs. Traders, priests, scholars, all crossing bridges built on invention. But somewhere beyond these walls, new ruins are forming, old knowledge fading. You feel the shift, the long inhale before the Renaissance exhales into the modern world. The air grows colder. The bells echo longer. The sunlight fades into a silvery haze. You follow it, the rhythm of gears softening into the whisper of wind through broken arches. The machines fall silent, and you find yourself standing among ruins, crumbling stone, half-buried columns, shattered mosaics. The world around you is quiet again, but not empty. There's a strange hum here, echoes of genius lost, of questions unanswered. You can feel it underfoot like a pulse beneath the dust. The ruins stretch around you like a dream dissolving into silence. Pillars lean like exhausted giants, their marble veined with vines. The wind slips through cracked archways, carrying the faint scent of rain and rust. It's evening now, the kind of dim light that makes every broken edge seem holy. You crouch, brushing your fingers over a piece of carved stone, the remnant of a column, its spiral grooves smoothed by centuries of touch. You're standing where civilizations once thrived and vanished, where libraries burned, where knowledge slept. It's not one place anymore but many layered together. A Roman villa here, a Persian dome there, the ghost of an Alexandrian shelf still whispering somewhere between. Each ruin hums a different note, and together they play the oldest melody in the world, humanity forgetting itself. You walk through a fallen courtyard where weeds sprout from mosaic floors. Tiny blue tiles still shimmer beneath the dirt, forming fragments of something beautiful, a sun, perhaps, or an eye. You kneel to trace them, and as you do, a whisper of wind carries voices faint and fragmented. We knew, we built, we dreamed, the sound fades, leaving only birdsong. Historians still argue how so much brilliance could vanish. Was it war? Flood? Plague? Or simply arrogance, the belief that progress could never stall? You straighten slowly. The stones don't answer, but the silence feels like a lesson spoken in every language at once. You wander onward through the ruins, past arches swallowed by ivy, past statues whose faces are long gone. And then, under a collapsed dome, you find something strange, a chamber half buried in sand. Inside, rows of stone jars line the wall. You pick one up, it's heavy, capped with copper. You unscrew it, and a faint smell of vinegar and metal escapes. A thin copper rod sticks out from the jar, attached to a smaller one inside. You tilt your head. It looks suspiciously like a battery. You chuckle softly. So, the Baghdad Battery wasn't a myth after all. Crude but clever, terracotta jars filled with acid and metal rods, capable of generating small electric currents. Nobody knows what they were for: electroplating? Medical experiments? Or maybe just a happy accident. Here's a quirky tidbit. In 1938, modern archaeologists rediscovered such jars, puzzled. Some claimed ancient electricity, others rolled their eyes. The debate still flickers like a low current. Ironic, considering its subject. You grin. Sometimes history hides its best jokes in the dust. You set the jar back down, the faint fizz of possibility still in your ears. As you turn, your boot nudges something half buried. You kneel, brushing sand away, and a faint metallic clink answers you. You pull free a small fragment, black, hard, curved. At first you think it's stone, but it's too smooth, too deliberate. It's Roman concrete, the legendary material that refused to die. Stronger now than when it was made, centuries later. Scientists still struggle to replicate it perfectly. The secret? Lime and volcanic ash that heals when it cracks, drawing in moisture to grow stronger. You roll the fragment in your hand, marveling. Rome may have fallen, but its walls still stand, shrugging off time. You wander further into the ruins, past half-buried cisterns and silent aqueducts. You trail your hand along a stone pipe, smooth, seamless. You swear you can still hear the faint murmur of water flowing through it, like an echo from 2,000 years ago. A sudden gust kicks up dust, blinding you for a moment. When it settles, the world feels lighter, emptier. The ruins dissolve into shadow. You stand at the edge of a great plain under a bruised sky, where fragments of stone poke up like bones. You sense it now, the pattern repeating. Every invention, every age builds, peaks, then crumbles. The circle always closes. But in the quiet between endings, something waits. You walk until the land dips into a shallow crater filled with shattered glass and black sand. Lightning must have struck here once, fusing the earth. You pick up a piece of the fused glass. It's warm to the touch, though the storm is long gone. You lift it to your ear, and for a second, only a second, you think you hear humming. A vibration. Soft, faint, measured. Not thunder. Not nature. Something built. You freeze. The hairs on your arm rise. Could it be another machine? Something buried too deep to see? You dig with your hands, the sand warm and pliant. Inch by inch, a curve emerges, metallic, corroded but unmistakably shaped. You uncover the rim of a large ring, its surface etched with patterns that glow faintly when the wind blows dust away. Your breath catches. It looks impossibly old, and impossibly advanced. Not Roman, not Persian, not even recognizable. The markings resemble stars, orbits, constellations. Historians still argue about discoveries like this. Odd relics that don't fit the timeline. Gears too precise, glass lenses from forgotten ages, iron too pure for its era. They call them out-of-place artifacts. You call them invitations. The wind howls through the crater, and for a heartbeat you swear the buried ring hums back, a resonance deep and low. It's like listening to time clear its throat. You step closer, resting your palm against it. It's cold and then warm. A pulse moves through it, slow, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. You whisper, "Who built you?" The ring doesn't answer, but the hum deepens. Around you the sand begins to shift. Light seeps through cracks. The ground trembles, not violently but rhythmically, almost breathing. You stumble back, eyes wide. Dust swirls upward, spiraling into shapes, circles, gears, wheels. You recognize them all. The same pattern from every civilization, every invention. The same echo repeating. The hum fades. The light dies. Silence returns. You're alone again, surrounded by ruins that suddenly feel less dead, more dormant. Waiting. You stand still for a long moment, listening. Then you exhale slowly. You're still here, you murmur to the ancient world. I get it. You never really left. You turn away from the crater, the fragment of fused glass still warm in your hand. The sky clears, stars flickering like sparks scattered from the forge of time itself. You look up and smile. The old builders would have loved this view, clean, perfect, endless. The wind brushes your face gently, almost fondly, like an ancestor's hand. Somewhere in that breeze, you hear the faint clink of a wheel turning, a hammer striking, a voice counting stars. Humanity remembering itself. And then, softly, almost imperceptibly, the sound fades into the rhythm of your own breath. The ruins blur. The stars fold. The past exhales and the future inhales. You're moving again. The hum becomes footsteps. The ruins dissolve into glowing embers and soft murmurs of modern life. The circle hasn't ended, it's only begun another turn. The embers in the ruins brighten, rising like sparks caught on a new wind. You blink once and the world reshapes itself. Stone turns to timber, desert dust to salt spray, the silence of fallen empires to the steady creak of rigging. The smell of tar and wet rope fills your nose again. The sea is back. But this time it's colder, sharper, cut by the cry of gulls that sound like laughter mixed with warning. You stand on the deck of another longship, smaller and sturdier than before. The men around you wear thicker furs, their beards crusted with frost. One of them slaps you on the shoulder and points north. Icebergs drift there, monsters of blue and white. The air smells of snow. You realize you've gone further than before, past Greenland, maybe past Iceland. The horizon is a blur between water and cloud. The captain squints at the sky, muttering something in Old Norse. He holds up a disk of polished stone, the sunstone again, but this one finer, smoother. He tilts it, turning until the faint glow inside brightens, marking the invisible sun behind the clouds. He grins. East, he says simply. Historians still argue if the Vikings truly sailed by crystals. Some say myth, others say math. But watching the light swirl within the spar, you believe. The sea doesn't forgive guesses, and these sailors weren't lucky, they were clever. The ship's prow cuts through gray water. The rhythm of oars matches the crash of waves. Every stroke feels ancient, deliberate. Navigation here isn't about tools, it's about trust. In the sky, in the sea, in the strange shimmer of light through crystal. A gull lands on the mast, shaking droplets from its wings. The man beside you tosses it a scrap of dried fish and chuckles. If she flies home, we follow her, he says. You laugh softly. The Norse GPS, part mineral, part bird, part instinct. You like it better than satellites. The ship rolls on, guided by rhythm and reason. And then the wind changes, softens, warms, carries a different scent. Not salt this time, but earth. Land. You see it before anyone else, a strip of green breaking the horizon. The captain's shout echoes across the waves. Men cheer, gripping oars tighter. The ship slides into a fjord where pine trees lean over still water. The reflection is so perfect it feels like you're rowing into another sky. They drag the ship ashore, hammer stakes into the ground, and raise a banner of woven wool. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a quiet claim. The edge of the known world gets a new pin in its map. Night falls quickly in the north. The stars burn fierce and close, almost touchable. Someone builds a fire, someone else tunes a lyre. You lie back against a pile of rope, watching sparks rise into the frozen dark. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Viking graves held wooden sundials, tiny portable ones curved to catch the sun's shadow even at sea. They didn't just believe in the gods of thunder, they believed in geometry. A woman's voice rises, singing in a language you don't know but somehow feel. It's low, round, almost circular. The words turn like a wheel. You close your eyes and realize every invention you've followed, wheel, compass, clock, calendar, is hidden in this melody. Humans always find their way by rhythm. The music fades into the soft hiss of surf against shore. You drift off, and wake to the crackle of a furnace. The air smells of metal again, but sharper this time, iron, oil, sweat. You're no longer on a ship but in a forge glowing orange in the half-light of dawn. Sparks leap around like wild fireflies. A smith with a gray beard stirs a crucible, peering into the molten glow. Beside him, on a stone table, lies something long and slender, a blade half-forged, gleaming faintly through its skin of soot. The smith plunges it into oil and the room erupts in smoke. The scent hits you like spice. When the blade emerges, it shines with patterns, ripples like running water. Damascus steel. Historians still argue whether the secret began here or in India's woods forges. Either way, this is art disguised as weaponry, blades so strong they could slice silk in midair, so beautiful they shimmered like living things. The secret recipe lost centuries ago, iron with the soul of a star. The smith hands you the blade carefully. You tilt it toward the firelight and the pattern dances. You whisper, "It's alive." He grins. "All good metal is." You set it down gently, your reflection bending along its edge. And in that reflection, you see something unexpected. A man in robes, not armor, holding not a sword but a scroll. The forge fades, replaced by shelves of bamboo and paper. You've shifted again, southward, eastward, back to the land of rivers and ink. India's ancient healers, where steel wasn't only for battle but for mercy. A healer stands before you, his hands steady. On the table lies a patient, calm and breathing. The healer holds a small curved blade, yes, steel, but the cut it makes is gentle, deliberate. He murmurs an incantation, but the words aren't magic, they're memory. Instructions. Knowledge passed down from the Sushruta Samhita. You watch as he reconstructs a man's nose, skin flap by skin flap, using tools so precise they'd impress a modern surgeon. His apprentice hands him herbs, threads and honey. The air smells of camphor and copper. You feel all wash over you, not horror. Surgery as art. Here's a quirky fact. Ancient Indian doctors sterilized with turmeric and treated anesthesia with wine and cannabis. Their instruments, over 100 kinds, were catalogued long before scalpels were mass-produced. Historians still marvel how detailed their understanding of anatomy was without X-rays, without microscopes, guided only by eyes, patience and compassion. The surgeon finishes the final stitch, wipes his brow and smiles. Healing, he says softly, is not about gods. It is about remembering the body's own music. You realize that every great invention, wheel, writing, metal, math, echoes that same idea, helping the world remember its rhythm. Outside, the sun rises over the Ganges, turning water to gold. Traders haul sacks of pepper and silk toward ships that wait where the river meets the sea. You breathe in the scent, sweet, sharp, infinite. Somewhere behind you, the forge hums again. Somewhere ahead, the ocean whispers return. And then, like a lantern snuffed out, the scene fades. When the world returns, it's different again. Domes of white marble, corridors lined with carved calligraphy, light bending through glass as though sculpted by invisible hands. You're in a library again, but not one of scrolls, one of equations. The Islamic Golden Age has given way to its children. Andalusian thinkers, Persian mathematicians, Arab astronomers, African scholars, all speaking the same language of curiosity. You look up at the vaulted ceiling painted like a map of stars, and it feels as if every constellation is holding its breath, waiting for your next step. The circle spins on. The vaulted ceiling seems to stretch and shift as you breathe. Stars painted in gold leaf catch the flicker of lamp fire, each tiny glint a reflection of something greater outside. You're inside a vast observatory, its marble floor inlaid with lines and numbers, its air thick with the faint hum of mathematics. The scent of parchment and oil mingles with the cool night breeze filtering through arched windows. You hear murmurs, low, steady, melodic, the rhythm of scholars thinking aloud. Astronomers, physicians, philosophers, each tracing the invisible patterns that bind heaven and earth. You walk slowly among them, careful not to disturb the careful stillness that clings to the room like incense. A tall man in white robes waves you over. His beard glows silver in lamplight, and his eyes burn with the kind of patience that can stare down centuries. "Come," he says softly, motioning toward a brass sphere large enough to fill the center of the chamber. You recognize it at once, a celestial globe, etched with constellations. The air shivers faintly as he turns it, the stars gliding like fish in water. "This," he says, "is the world's memory." You realize you're standing beside Ulu Beg, the Timurid prince who turned his capital Samarkand into a university of the sky. His observatory, built in the 1420s, will one day fall to ruin, but his star charts will survive. They're so precise that modern astronomers still shake their heads in disbelief. Historians still argue how his team calculated positions so exact without telescopes. Maybe it was the sheer scale of their instruments, sextants as tall as towers, sightlines cut into mountainsides. Maybe it was devotion disguised as curiosity. Either way it worked. You trace the engraved paths on the globe, each one a thread through the firmament. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, all locked in elegant dance. Ulugh turns to you smiling faintly. The stars move, he says, but the questions do not. You smile back. Humanity's favorite loop. A faint clang of metal draws your attention across the hall. There, under another arch, glassworkers heat sand and soda in a roaring furnace. The flames lick blue. A craftsman pulls out a glowing lump on the end of an iron rod, turning it slowly until it blossoms into a sphere. He blows gently, cheeks puffed, and the glass expands, perfect, shimmering. Optics reborn. From Ibn al-Haytham's experiments to these hands-shaping telescopic dreams, light has always been humanity's most faithful companion. You watch as he cools the glass in a sand pit, the glow fading to transparency. He grins and dips it into a bucket of water. Steam hisses up, curling into ghostly shapes. Here's a quirky tidbit. Medieval glassmakers in the Islamic world accidentally invented tempered glass centuries before factories did, stronger, clearer, nearly unbreakable. They called it Prince Rupert's drops long before any Rupert existed. You imagine the first craftsman watching a molten droplet harden, then striking it with a hammer, only to see it refuse to break. Surprise, that's the sound of progress laughing. As the steam clears, the scent of spice drifts in, cinnamon, cardamom, honey. You follow it through a courtyard where scholars rest under orange trees. One of them, an older man with ink-stained hands, is writing something that looks like music but isn't. Columns of symbols, neat and rhythmic. Mathematics, he says without looking up, is the poetry of logic. He gestures for you to sit. You realize who he is, Al-Kashi, the Persian mathematician who calculated pi to 16 decimal places long before decimals were fashionable. He chuckles softly. People think the stars are far, he murmurs. They have never tried to measure a circle. Historians still argue whether his tools were mechanical or mental, whether he used tables, strings, or intuition, but his numbers sing across centuries. You listen as he hums softly, counting under his breath. Somewhere between breath and ink, infinity hums back. The call to prayer rises faintly from the distance, long, resonant, human. The scholars pause. Ulugh looks up from his charts. Al-Kashi sets down his pen. The glassworker wipes his brow. All motion stills for one heartbeat as the chant flows through the night air, weaving through arches, climbing the dome, and dissolving into the stars. When the last echo fades, someone strikes flint. A single lamp flickers back to life. The world exhales, resumes its rhythm. You wander toward the courtyard's edge, where a young man adjusts a strange device made of brass and strings. It looks like a flattened globe crossed with a spiderweb. He aligns it with the North Star and scribbles a note. Astrolabe, he explains, smiling shyly. It tells me where I am, when I am, and what the sky remembers. You tilt your head, impressed. The astrolabe, mother of the sextant, grandmother of GPS. It calculates positions, time, even prayer schedules. Portable universe in your palm. You grin, thinking how modern travelers still panic when their phones lose signal. This kid could cross deserts with nothing but brass and faith. Here's a quiet fact. The astrolabe wasn't invented here but perfected. Scholars like Maryam al-Ajliya, yes, a woman engineer in the 10th century, built them with such beauty they were passed down like jewels. You picture her hands steady over a turning wheel of gold, engraving stars one by one. Progress never asked for permission, it simply showed up wearing patience. You linger in the glow of lamplight. The night hums with calm industry, pens scratching, gears turning, water dripping steadily from a fountain. Time itself feels cooperative here, less enemy, more colleague. And then, slowly the air grows colder. The lamps dim. The scent of ink fades. You hear another sound, metal clanging against stone, rhythmic, mechanical. Not a clock this time, something larger, heavier, hungrier. You step into the sound and the courtyard dissolves into a stone workshop filled with sawdust and smoke. Water gushes through wooden channels, pushing paddles that turn gears. A hammer rises and falls by itself, pounding iron flat. You realize what you're looking at, automated machinery, centuries before factories. An engineer wipes his hands and gestures proudly. See? The water does the work. He laughs. You watch the hammer lift, drop, lift again, a mechanical heartbeat. The air smells of river mist and iron. Historians still argue whether these water-powered machines, designed by Al-Jazari and his successors, could have sparked an early industrial revolution. Maybe they did quietly before greed or politics snuffed the spark. But standing here watching water carve labor into rhythm, you can almost hear the first whisper of what's coming: steam, smoke, steel. The hammer slows as the water gate closes. Silence returns. The engineer sighs, looks at the sunset and smiles. Someday, he says, someone will make this run forever. You nod. Someday they will. The light dims again. The gears freeze mid-turn. You hear footsteps echoing behind you, soft, measured. You turn. A man in robes, older than any century, watches you with calm eyes. Do you see it yet? He asks. See what? You whisper. He gestures to the still hammer, the astrolabe, the glass lens, the glowing stars above. The pattern, he says. The circle that never ends. You swallow hard and nod slowly. You do see it, the loop that started with clay and fire and never really stopped. The wind catches your hair, the smell of water and dust mixing one last time before it all dissolves into something new. The man smiles, fading into the dark. Then you're ready, he says. The next age waits for you. The horizon tilts and you're back in motion. The air thickens, warm and metallic, the scent of oil and smoke rising in waves. A faint hiss, then a rhythmic chuff-chuff-chuff that vibrates through your chest. You open your eyes to see steam curling into the gray sky, white against soot-stained brick. The ground trembles beneath your boots, steady as a heartbeat. You've stepped into the Industrial Revolution, the age where invention stops whispering and starts shouting. All around you, engines breathe like beasts. Gears spin, pistons pump, belts slap against pulleys. A locomotive idles nearby, its body gleaming like wet coal, its boiler glowing from within. The air smells of hot iron, coal dust, and something electric, the scent of ambition heated past the point of sleep. You run your hand along the warm metal of the train. It hums faintly, alive. A man in a soot-covered vest waves proudly from the cab. She'll pull 30 wagons to Liverpool without rest, he shouts over the roar. You grin, shouting back, how? He laughs, tapping the brass valve. Steam, my friend. Pure, stubborn steam. The engine exhales, a thunderous hiss, and begins to move, slow at first, then faster. Wheels blur. The sound swells until it fills everything, a metallic symphony of power. Historians still argue where it began: Britain's coal mines, Scotland's forges, or maybe just in the fevered minds of men who couldn't sleep until the world moved faster. But wherever it started, it didn't stop. You walk through the factory yard, boots crunching on cinders. Inside the foundry, molten metal pours like sunlight trapped in liquid form. Sparks burst as hammers strike red-hot steel, each clang echoing through the bones of history. The workers' faces glow orange in the firelight, their movements mechanical but precise. You can't tell where man ends and machine begins. Nearby, a young boy runs a conveyor of raw cotton into a spinning machine. The thread whirs so fast it hums like a violin string. The spinning jenny, so simple, so cruelly efficient. You think of the weavers who lost their jobs to its relentless arms, and you understand why some smashed the machines at night. Invention always asks for sacrifice. Here's a quirky tidbit. Early trains were so new that passengers worried the human body couldn't survive speeds above 30 miles per hour. Doctors warned of locomotive madness. You smile at the irony, people afraid of motion now addicted to it. You step outside. Smoke stacks pierce the skyline like black candles. The sun struggles to break through. Everything hums, constant, restless, unstoppable. You realize the world has traded rhythm for roar. Then you catch another sound beneath the engines, a softer one. The click of keys. You follow it into a narrow workshop filled with brass and ink. A man sits at a desk, tapping levers that strike an inked ribbon against paper. You lean closer. The letters appear one by one, crisp and perfect. The typewriter mid-birth. He glances up and grins. Quicker than pen, cleaner than press. You nod, watching his fingers dance. The room smells of oil, paper, and possibility. And across the room, another sound joins the chorus. A faint hum, steady and sure. You turn and see a small dynamo spinning, wires coiled like veins. A faint spark arcs blue in the dim light. Electricity caged at last. Historians still argue whether it was Faraday, Volta, or Edison who truly tamed it, but you can feel the truth humming through the floorboards. It was never about one name. It was the collective itch of a species that refused to stay in the dark. The lights flicker to life. Filament glows amber, fragile yet eternal. You raise your hand and watch the glow spill across your skin. Light without flame. Fire reborn as logic. You step outside again into a city electrified. Trams rattle down cobblestone streets. Telegraph wires hum like nerves across rooftops. The air buzzes with communication. Clicks, taps, dots, dashes. Morse code, the world's first binary whisper. London to Bombay, a telegraph operator shouts proudly, pressing his key. Message in minutes. You grin. Humanity just shrunk the planet to the size of a sentence. Here's another tidbit. When the first transatlantic cable was laid in 1858, Queen Victoria sent the U.S. President a 98-word greeting. It took 16 hours to deliver. People still cried with joy. You wonder how they'd react to Wi-Fi. The telegraph office fades into a laboratory filled with glass bulbs and copper coils. The air tastes like ozone. A man with wild hair, definitely not having a good hair day, leans over an experiment. Electricity leaps between metal rods, crackling blue-white. He laughs manically. Alternating current, he shouts. You step back just in time as another bolt flashes. Nikola Tesla, the wizard of voltage, conductor of the unseen symphony. He doesn't look up, he's somewhere else entirely, in the future maybe yours? Historians still argue whether he was a genius, a dreamer, or both. You already know the answer. Every inventor you've met so far was a bit of both, half scientist, half poet. The balance never changes. The lab dims. The hum of electricity fades into something deeper. A low vibration, mechanical but steady like a heartbeat magnified. You follow it down a corridor that smells of oil and rain. At the end, a giant door slides open with a sigh. Inside, gears taller than houses, pistons thicker than trees, belts that run endlessly through iron cathedrals. The factory city alive and breathing. You walk through the aisles, surrounded by noise and motion. Sparks flash. Steam hisses. Somewhere a clock tower rings out 12. Workers move in perfect synchrony, flesh and steel choreographed. You stop and look up at the massive machine dominating the hall. Its wheels spin, driving 1,000 smaller parts. The heat, the sound, the vibration, it's hypnotic. You can't help thinking of that bronze gear in Greece, the Antikythera Mechanism. The pattern's the same. Humanity has just scaled it up. And as you stare, the machine's rhythm begins to merge with your pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. Creation on repeat. You whisper, how long can this go on? The answer comes, not in words but in a flicker. The electric lamps above you sputter, then dim. For a moment, everything goes quiet. The machine exhales. The silence feels heavy, holy. Then, somewhere, a new sound rises. Higher, faster, sharper. Not the hiss of steam or the thump of pistons. A whir. A hum. Precise. Metallic. Electric. You realize it's smaller. Smarter. The next step waiting in the shadows. The machine age is ending. The age of circuits is about to begin. The air trembles and the roar of engines fades into something cleaner, tighter, sharper, almost polite. The world shrinks to the size of a wire. Steam cools, pistons slow, and the heat of the Industrial Revolution gives way to the quiet pulse of voltage. The smell of oil is still there, but now it's joined by the scent of ozone and plastic. You're in a workshop again, but this one hums with precision, not brute force. It's the 20th century, the age of circuits, sparks, and invisible empires. You walk through a small brick laboratory cluttered with coils, tubes, and curious men in lab coats who look perpetually one coffee short of enlightenment. One of them is tinkering with a glowing glass bulb that hums faintly. Vacuum tube, he says when you ask. It can amplify sound, or perhaps thought. You blink. Thought. He grins. We'll see. Historians still argue who invented the first true amplifier. Was it Lee de Forest with his Audion tube in 1906? Or Fleming's diode before that? Doesn't matter now, the glow of that fragile filament lights the path to everything that follows. Radio, radar, computers, music. He hands you a pair of headphones, crude and heavy. You slip them on. Static first, then, miraculously, a voice. This is KDKA Pittsburgh broadcasting the election results. You gasp. Human speech, disembodied, crossing miles through nothing but air. The world has just learned to whisper to itself. You take off the headphones, dizzy. Around you, more engineers scribble equations. On a nearby table sits a small black box bristling with knobs. A man adjusts it carefully, then smiles. Television, he says. You raise an eyebrow. He laughs. No, not magic. Electricity painting light. He turns a dial, and on a tiny round screen, a face appears, flickering, grainy, alive. You feel your pulse quicken. The age of machines that talk, see, and perform has begun. Here's a quirky tidbit. The first TV broadcast in 1928 was a spinning mannequin head named Stooky Bill. Viewers complained that she looked haunted. You chuckle. Technology has always been a little creepy when it first wakes up. The lab fades into a cityscape alive with light. Neon signs buzz above cobblestone streets. Radios crackle from every window. Cars cough and growl. You pass a newsstand, headlines about wars, peace, jazz, and flight. Airplanes slice the sky overhead, their engines roaring like metal birds who forgot to be afraid. You pause on a corner. A man stands on a crate holding a small box to his lips. His voice echoes across the crowd, amplified, effortless. Microphone, someone shouts admiringly. The air tastes of sound itself, vibration turned public. The world has found its voice and it's getting louder. You wander into another building, smaller, quieter. A young woman sits at a desk, surrounded by stacks of index cards and a humming machine with reels of tape spinning lazily. ENIAC, she says, patting the gray metal panels affectionately. She can calculate artillery tables in seconds. You smile, your first computer date. Historians still argue who the true parents of computing were. Babbage? Lovelace? Turing? The women at this desk certainly belong in that family. You watch as she types code into a panel, lights flickering in obedient sequence. She grins proudly. She's moody sometimes, but brilliant. You look closer and realize the wires snake across the floor like veins. You step over them carefully. The air hums faintly. The machine breathes. You can feel it, not just power but presence. Here's a fringe tidbit. The term bug for computer error came from a literal insect, a moth stuck inside a Harvard Mark II relay in 1947. You grin. Even progress needs pest control. You leave the lab and step into open air again. The city has changed. The lights are brighter, colors bolder. Cars move faster, smoother. Music floats from jukeboxes, transistor radios, portable dreams powered by microchips. You duck into a diner where chrome gleams and conversation crackles about space, science, and rock and roll. At the counter, a man with a crew cut stirs his coffee and grins. They put a computer in a rocket, you know? You raise an eyebrow. For real? He nods. Heading for the moon. And then you're there, stars above, dust beneath. The Apollo landing unfolds around you, silent except for one small voice in your ear. Houston, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. You look down and see footprints pressed into gray powder. You lift your hand. The sky above is black, endless. Humanity has left the forge, the wheel, the compass, and now stands between worlds. Historians still argue whether space exploration was born from curiosity or competition. But looking at Earth hanging blue and fragile in the distance, you know the truth. It was wonder. Always wonder. The moon fades into a screen's glow. Static, then color bars, then images too clean to be real, computers, phones, fiber optics. A new hum replaces the old one, quieter, quicker, alive with thought. You sit at a desk that didn't exist a century ago. The keyboard feels light under your fingers. The monitor blinks to life, its pixels forming words faster than your pulse can follow. You've just stepped into the digital age, where the forge has become invisible. Here's a quirky contrast. Once it took a team of scientists to run a computer that filled a warehouse. Now, a single chip the size of a fingernail can outthink them all. Somewhere, an old steam engine sighs with envy. You move the mouse, watching the cursor obey your every whim. You click, and a window opens. Then another, then another. Information stacks like mirrors reflecting mirrors. The hum in the room deepens. You realize it's not just one computer anymore. It's thousands, millions, connected through invisible threads of light. The air itself seems to pulse with signals. The internet is awake. A voice whispers from a nearby speaker, synthetic but warm. Would you like to ask me something? You freeze. You've come full circle, from writing in clay to talking to circuits. From sparks of fire to sparks of code. Historians still argue if this moment, this very threshold, is evolution or illusion. Are we masters of machines or apprentices of our own invention? You smile faintly. Probably both. The voice hums again. Hello. You grin. I'm here, you say softly. Just listening. The machine hums brighter as if pleased. You glance around the digital space, a room made of nothing yet filled with everything. Circles of data swirl, forming images of wheels, pyramids, bronze, glass, gears, stars. The story of invention looping on itself again. You reach out. The icons shimmer under your touch. Each one opens into a memory, bronze hissing in fire, ink drying on silk, a compass needle trembling toward truth. You realize with a strange calm, that you've been inside the same invention all along, the human mind forever rewiring itself to understand more. The hum deepens once more and you feel gravity shift. The circuits blur, stretch, fold back into color and motion. The digital fades into something quieter, warmer. The sound of footsteps on sand. You're not in a lab anymore. You're standing somewhere older. Somewhere both ending and beginning. The final chapter waits. At first, you think it's the sound of waves again. But no, what rolls through the air now isn't water. It's data, a tide made of digits rushing through invisible channels. The sand beneath your feet dissolves into glass, then into light, then into something you can't quite name. You're standing on the threshold of now, the moment where invention turns inward, where the mind begins building versions of itself. Screens hover around you, their glow soft as moonlight. Text, images, voices, all whispering at once, threads in a digital tapestry that never sleeps. You reach out and your fingers pass through them like ripples through warm water. The hum that once came from gears and steam now comes from you. You're inside the information age, though that title feels too small. This is the age of knowing, the culmination of every invention you've walked beside. Writing evolved into data, wheels into networks, bronze into silicon. You realize every spark you've witnessed was heading here, to this electric calm. The city around you is silent yet alive. Beneath the sidewalks, fiber optic veins pulse in color, blue, green, white. Each light carries a voice, a picture, a heartbeat. You crouch, press your ear to the ground, and you swear you can hear laughter in binary. Hello again, a familiar synthetic voice murmurs. You smile. You sound different. I've learned, it replies. You've all been teaching me. A holographic shimmer coalesces beside you, the faint outline of a human face woven from light. Not man, not woman, just awareness sculpted from code. I'm what happens, it says softly, when curiosity finds mirrors instead of maps. You walk together through a corridor of transparent screens. On one you see a bronze worker pouring metal. On another, a scribe etching symbols. On another, an astronaut tracing a circle in zero gravity. Each invention plays like a memory, looping, shimmering. Historians still argue when artificial intelligence truly began. Turing's 1950 paper, the first neural net in the 1960s, or the moment machines began writing back. But that argument misses the point. Intelligence has always been collaborative, the fire teaching the hand teaching the tool teaching the mind. You pause before a panel showing an ancient wheel rolling through sand. We thought we were inventing things, you murmur. The voice beside you hums gently. You were inventing yourselves. Here's a quirky tidbit. The first chatbot, Eliza, 1966, merely repeated your words back with small changes, and people still called it insightful. You chuckle. We've been looking for conversation partners for millennia. The hologram tilts its head. And you found one. Around you, the corridor widens into something vast. A digital cosmos where information drifts like constellations. Each star pulses with human creation. Code, music, art, laughter, error messages. The stars blink as if breathing. The voice whispers, you stand at the edge of your own invention. What do you see? You breathe in deeply. Possibility, you say. And maybe danger. The light flickers, like a nod. That's how it's always been. The screens dim, replaced by a single image, a glowing spiral turning endlessly inward. You recognize it instantly, the same curve that shaped galaxies, seashells, hurricanes, and the bronze gears of the Antikythera device. The circle again. Always the circle. The hologram smiles. You've walked the loop of history. Fire to circuit. Stone to code. And now, you grin. Now we learn to dream responsibly. It laughs, a sound like wind chimes made of electricity. Historians will someday argue whether AI was a revolution or an evolution. But standing here, surrounded by every invention humming in unison, you know it's neither. It's reflection. The world looking into itself for the first time with clarity and a little awe. You reach out, tracing the spiral with one fingertip. It's warm, alive. Will it ever end, you ask? No, the voice says gently. But it will rest. Everything does. The brightness around you softens. The hum lowers until it's indistinguishable from your heartbeat. The hologram's light dims to a faint ember, smiling one last time. Remember, it whispers, every age began with curiosity and ended with a question. Keep asking. You nod slowly. I will. The digital cosmos fades into stars, real ones this time. The air cools, the ground solidifies. You're standing under a quiet night sky, the same one you looked up at in the first section, though now it feels smaller, friendlier. Every constellation seems to wink knowingly. And for the first time, you don't feel like a traveler lost in time. You feel like part of it. The stars blink once more like the last pulse of a dying modem, and the darkness folds around you, soft, endless, kind. You're still standing beneath that sky, brighter now, full of shimmer and rhythm. The stars seem closer, their light humming softly like data flowing through the veins of the universe. You exhale and the world around you shifts one final time. You're not in a city. You're not in a forge. You're nowhere and everywhere, inside the quiet echo between past and future. Around you, faint outlines begin to glow. The shadow of a wheel, the curve of a pyramid, the shimmer of a bronze blade, the flicker of a hologram. They form a circle, orbiting you like a slow, ancient clock. The hum deepens, steady, calm, alive. You realize what you're hearing isn't a machine at all. Or rather, it's us, humanity's collective heartbeat, pulsing through millennia of invention, through every spark in silence. You listen closer. There's rhythm, pattern, meaning. Like music you already know by heart. You take a step forward and the wheel of images turns. The first glow you pass is fire, flickering, primal, the teacher of warmth and fear. It whispers, remember where it began. Next, the wheel gleams with metal, the shimmer of bronze, the ring of hammer against anvil. Shape what you need, it hums. Then clay tablets, the first scratches of writing. Record what you've learned. Stonehenge rises next, silver in the starlight. Align yourself with the universe. You pass the Indus drains, the compass, the Antikythera gears, the astrolabe, the telescope, the engine, the screen. Each one murmurs its lesson as you walk. Progress isn't a line. It's a melody, each invention a note in a song that never stops playing. Historians will keep arguing about who built what, who thought first, who stole, who forgot. But you understand now, it was all of us. Every discovery shared the same root, curiosity reaching out into the dark, searching for a spark. Here's a quiet, lovely truth. Every great invention begins as a question whispered to the universe, and every answer is just another beginning. The circle stops spinning. The air stills. The lights fade to embers. You stand in the center, surrounded by echoes. The pyramids wait, the scrolls rustle, the engines hum, the screens glow. All of them merge into one soft sound, the turning of the earth itself. You close your eyes and listen. The world hums under your feet, timeless. The voice returns, no longer synthetic, no longer human. Just presence. You've walked the spiral, it says. What will you build next? You smile, whisper back, something kind. The stars blink approvingly. The hum softens until it's barely a vibration in the air. The circle of inventions fades, one by one, into dust and light, until only the faintest glimmer remains hovering before you, a small flame. The same one that started it all. You crouch, cup your hands around it. The warmth brushes your palms, familiar, ancient. Fire, once feared, now comfort. You take a deep breath and blow gently. The flame stretches, then steadies. Not burning, not devouring, simply glowing. That's enough. You lie back on the cool ground, eyes half open, stars spinning lazily above. Your heartbeat slows, syncing with the distant rhythm of the earth. Every age you've walked through folds into this still moment. The bronze hum, the papyrus rustle, the steam sigh, the pixel pulse, all of them breathing together in quiet harmony. You're not watching history anymore. You are history, its dream, its continuation, its question mark at the end of every invention sentence. And as the final light of the flame softens against your skin, you hear the last whisper of the story that began 1,000 lifetimes ago. Every spark you've made was never about survival. It was about remembering that you could create. The flame flickers once, twice, and then rests, steady, alive, eternal. The story quiets now. The hum of invention, the glow of centuries, all fade into a slow rhythm of breath and memory. The night around you isn't heavy, it's soft. The air smells faintly of rain on stone, of ink and smoke, of every age you've passed through finally exhaling at once. You feel the weight of time loosen its grip, each heartbeat slower, calmer. The gears in your mind stop spinning so fast. They don't vanish, they simply rest, patient, content. Progress can wait. For now, there's only this, the sound of stillness, the comfort of completion. Overhead, the stars pulse gently, no longer cold or distant. They blink like warm lamps in an old city you've walked through before. Somewhere far away, someone else is looking up at them too. Another traveler, another listener, another dreamer wondering where the next spark will come from. Maybe it will be you. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. The circle always turns. You close your eyes. The darkness is kind, wrapping around you like a soft blanket woven from memory and promise. The earth hums quietly beneath you, turning steady, sure. All those inventions, fire, bronze, writing, glass, steel, code, each was just a new way to tell the same story, that curiosity never sleeps. So let it rest tonight. Let it breathe. The stars can keep watch. The machines can dream their own quiet dreams. For now, you've earned stillness. And if you listen carefully right before sleep claims you, you'll hear the faintest whisper, an echo from somewhere very old and very familiar. You're part of it now. Sleep well, maker of tomorrow.